What is up, guys? Welcome back to the channel. How are you guys doing today? Glad to have you here. If you guys are brand new here and you guys have ever looked at my account, a lot of people will look at my account and see a lot of gems, a lot of commanders, a lot of kills, a lot of power. A lot of VIP, and they'll go, how did you do this all FTP? They'll look at the legendary skins. How did this happen? They'll always ask me for, what is your secret? What secret under the table shady things are you doing to make all of this happen? I get this question, this specific question, like what kind of secret tips do you have? I get that question all the time. And in reality, I mean, there is no secret. I talk about it a lot in my different videos, but for this video, I'm going to boil down probably what the maybe 3 or 4 most important things that you need to do. This is not going to be like a direct beginner guide. I'm going to assume you have a lot of context when it comes to a lot of the answers I'm saying. If you guys don't have any context on the game and you guys are beginners, I would highly suggest you check out the perfect starter guide that I have on my channel. It's like an hour and 40 minutes. If you've just started the game, it literally has everything you could possibly need to know and then a little bit more, whereas this video is going to be on some of the finer points. So one of the things that I've noticed a lot, especially in coaching clients, I've had probably over 100 clients at this point. If you guys are interested in coaching and stuff like that, it's right there. You join the Discord, you PM me, it's $35 a session. One of the things that I notice every single time I coach somebody is you will have somebody that plays maybe 3 to 4 hours a day. If you guys didn't know, I play generally what you see me stream and then not much else after that. So I'm probably playing 3-4 hours a day if I stream. If I don't stream, maybe it's 1 to 2 hours. I just don't play that much, right? If there's fighting, I'm gonna be fighting for a long time, but when it comes to grinding on the account, I just make sure that whatever time I am playing, I am playing. So if you're playing 3 to 4 hours a day and you have 1 or no farms, you're doing yourself a massive disservice. And most of the people that I end up coaching, they just don't gather gems or they don't have farms, but they'll be playing sometimes 5 to 6 hours a day on large spender accounts. So the number one thing that I would suggest for everybody, if you want to get 70% of your way to the most efficiency, is make yourself some farms, right? For every march, the way I like to say it, or the way I've heard it, is for every march you have, add an extra farm. Start with 2 and then add +1 each time. So if you got 1 march, 3 farms, 2 marches, 4 farms, 3 marches, 5 farms, right? And you can just keep going. Eventually, you might want to build more farms, just depending on how much you fight or how much you don't fight. But realistically, from getting from 0 to hero, which is gonna be your T5, is gonna cost you, I think 20 billion resources. Shooting from the hip, of course. I don't have the exact figure in front of me, but 20 billion aggregate food value sounds about right. And that's an egregious amount of resources to try and do on one account, right? And at the same time, you're gonna need the speed ups to spend those. You're gonna need sculptures to get YSG and Richard, and you're gonna want to fight, you're gonna want gear, you're gonna want a whole bunch of stuff, right? And the only way you're gonna get all of this stuff is by gathering gems in your main account, generally, and gathering resources on your farm accounts. The resources on your farm accounts are honestly almost more important than the gems on your main account, but you can just do them both in tandem and you'll be in a really, really good spot. So if you haven't done that, you need to do that. It's absolutely crucial to making everything work in Rise of Kingdoms. The next thing, number 2 on this list, is going to be invest in the meta and stick to one at a time. A lot of people will ask me a whole bunch of different questions about who to invest in and what to invest in. People ask me in Season of Conquest if they should invest in Alex, in Herald, in Pakal, in Attila, in Takeda, in Chandra, in Gilgamesh. There are a ton of great commanders in this game. And as a 5th march, like Henry Tommy, that sounds like a great march to me, right? As a 4th march, maybe something like Tarek or Sargon, right? These marches kind of sound okay. The thing is people are looking for these marches before that they built their first 3, right? So the first 3 marches you should always be going for, as we talked about in the transition to SOC video, are Guan Scipio, probably Boudica YSG, and I would say Nevsky Joan, right? These are your top 3 marches, right? This is the meta that you should be going for. It's not super difficult to go for these 3, right? If you were an infantry main before Season of Conquest and you come in, you have infantry gear, then you go for Guan Scipio. If you have cavalry gear, right? When I say gear, I'm talking about legendary gear. So if you have legendary cavalry gear, you go for the Nevsky Joan. If you have no gear for anybody, I would get a Milky Way or a set chest, and I'd go for Boudica YSG. And you can just build any of these meta marches, and once you have one, then you build your next one. So I started with Guan Scipio. Now I'm going to Nevsky Joan, and then Boudica YSG. So as long as you have some combination of these 3, it doesn't matter which one you start with, you're in a really good spot. And that's what I'm doing, and that's what I suggest other people do. If you're looking at your Herald and your Alex, and you're like, how can I field every legendary commander that I have at my disposal simultaneously, you're gonna fail. And you're not just gonna kind of fail, you're gonna fail really hard. You just cannot field that amount of troops, right? And generally, people who want subpar commanders also don't have as many farms or gather gems, right? So you guys are gonna have worse gear, worse commanders, less resources, and then try to field more than somebody who has more than everything that you have. So I would just be very cognizant. Just stick to the meta, right? Like, people have already kind of like cracked the game and kind of know where to go with things, and you could just kind of follow their footsteps. You don't have to be an infantry main or a cavalry main or an archer main. It's extremely hard to main any of these units, right? You can just kind of build the best from all three, because you're going to have all three T5s and all three max tech way before you have like 4 or 5 expertise meta commanders and gear. So just make sure you stick to the meta. And, you know, you don't have to like 5-5-1-5 or 5-5-5-1 all the commanders. I mean, don't be afraid to expertise them. If you have the gear way before you have the commanders, then make sure you get the commanders to a usable spot, right? Not necessarily the best, as fast as you can. But if you don't have the gear yet, you can just expertise the commanders and make them as good as possible before you field them. Just know what your plan is. You're like, I plan to field this commander at this level with this gear, and don't field the commander before you can do that. It's like live within your means, essentially. And the last thing I would say is plan ahead and stick to the plan. One of the main reasons why my account is so ridiculously successful is because I can plan ahead very well. If somebody asks me a question like, what kind of gold do you have? Or what's your goal for this KvK? Or like, how many resources do you need for that? How many speeds do you need for that, right? I can calculate that, whether it be in my head or using like the Rise of Kingdoms calculator, which I'll include in the description below, or some other outside resource to do it. Like, you ask me what my goal is, I will tell you what my goal is, and I'll tell you the steps it takes me to reach that goal. If you have a goal, it is imperative that you figure out how you're going to reach that goal. You caveat it in case different things happen. So for example, if you're like, I'm never going to spend any speed ups outside of research until I hit T5, unless I'm trying to get to CH17, unless I'm trying to get to CH22, unless I'm trying to get into the top alliance, right? So you set your caveats up ahead of time, right? Because you know what to expect. There are a ton of videos everywhere telling you exactly what to do. And so when you reach those situations, you're like, okay, I'm never going to do this unless, and you have your rules there. I hear this a lot when it comes to like, some of my friends are more into stocks, right? And they talk about people who will set up like arbitrary stock rules with arbitrary caveats, right? To decide when they can go in and when they can't. So if somebody's stock trading rule is we're going to rebalance our sheets at the end of every year and we cannot pull out before that, that's their arbitrary rule. That's fine, right? We have our own rules, right? And as long as we follow them, we're generally fine. As long as you don't impulse spend your gems. If you're like, I'm only going to spend my gems on more than gems, seasonal events, and 10 spinning or 100 spinning wheels and like 10 spinning eggs, right? If that's your rule, right, none of your gems can go elsewhere. So whatever you plan, just make sure you stick to that plan and you'll generally be fine, right? When you start saying, oh, this commander is shiny, that gear is shiny, like, oh, I picked up this thing from the tavern, right? When you start building those Shio's Returns and the Eternal Knights as your first 2 legendary gears, you know, this is when you've started to shaft yourself. So the further away you get from that, the better you will be. So set a good plan, right? Check your plan with a couple more experienced players, set a couple caveats to your plan, and make sure you're good to go. Now, the final thing I will say is you're gonna have to be careful where you get your information. A lot of people that play Rise of Kingdoms are bad at the game. Like, not kind of bad, like really, really, really bad.
Y'all are trash. And I mean this from the bottom of my heart.
They will give you advice that is completely antithetical. They'll tell you to skip YSG because maybe YSG isn't that good in SOC anymore. They'll tell you to either full invest in Alex or 5511 Alex or get Alex instead of YSG or maybe open with like Baybar's Belisarius. Like, there's a whole slew of like crazy shit that people will suggest to you. And the thing to remember is like, people are they're not evil, right? They're not actually trying to sink you. The issue with people in Rise of Kingdoms is Rise of Kingdoms requires a whole lot of investment, whether that be time or money or brain power, whatever it is. And sometimes people will fuck up their accounts in ways that are inexplicable, but it's only a fuck up if you recognize it as a fuck up. So instead of recognizing it and looking at their account and saying like, was this the best thing I could have done? They look at other people's accounts and they're like, oh, well, I did this and it worked for me, so do this or do that or do this, right? There's some videos where I go into detail and I'm like, oh, you should start infantry pre-soc, or you should do Richard 5111 and then you should go YSG and then you should do Richard 5511. And then when you look at Alex, you know, if you can't expertise him for KvK2, don't invest into him, don't half invest, you know? Like, all of these pieces of advice that I have are not just advice that I built for myself, or advice that I would follow or do every time, right? This is the correct advice, right? For me coaching, you know, tons of players, for me talking to tons of players, talking to experts, whether that be in the infantry Discord, the cavalry Discord, you know, people who have been playing for like 4 years, people with 10 billion KP, right? Like, all of these players that are like large and in charge, I have compared a lot of my ideas with, right? And sometimes I'm right and sometimes I'm wrong. And when I'm wrong, I'm like, hey, you know, I was wrong about this. You know, I'll retroactively go back to some of the people that I've coached, and occasionally I'll be wrong about something. I'm like, hey, I thought this was the best. It's actually not the best, right? I will change my ideas. There are a lot of people that will never, ever, ever, ever change their ideas, and they'll give you terrible advice. So if you get advice from someone, especially advice that contradicts mine, right? It's not always that I'm wrong or always that I'm right. It's that you should double check with another person, right? So if somebody goes, oh, that 12-inch guy, he doesn't know what he's talking about. This commander is better than this commander and this commander and this commander. Check that advice with multiple other people, right? So if you're in a jumper group and somebody gives you advice that is actually horrible, you can't really know if it's horrible because you've just started, right? So you heard advice from me, you heard the advice from somebody else. You should go to a third party place, maybe the questions chat on the Rock Discord. You could go to my Discord, someone that's not me. You go to the infantry Discord, the cavalry Discord, any of these Discords where you can ask extra questions. And that's one of the biggest things I would say is like, you need to ask questions, but recognize who you're asking questions to, right? Make sure you see their accounts, make sure you see their kill points, make sure you see their commanders, make sure you see what kingdoms they're in, right? Like I would respect if somebody's in like 365, 1093, 960, 254, right? Like these kingdoms, I'm going to look at them in a way different light than I look at somebody in like some random D kingdom. So these are going to be my biggest piece of advice. One, there really are no shortcuts in this game. Make sure you build 3 farms and you gather gems, at least, right? That's the most basic thing you can do. I generally have to suggest that to everybody. So if you guys are thinking about buying coaching and you guys have not built 3 farms and gathered gems in your main account, maybe do that ahead of time. Invest in the meta, right? Other people have already figured out this game, right? There's like an overarching like meta sweep, like Juan Scipio, Buda Kobayashi, Nevsky Joan. Make sure you do that, right? It's pretty easy. Pick 2 commanders out of those combos and just invest gear and commanders into them, and commander sculptures into them. And that's it. It's like pretty easy. The third thing is plan ahead and stick to that plan. You have a plan. You're like, this is the commander I'm going to invest in. I'm going to do it this way. I'm going to have T5 by this point, right? You know your plan. Just stop breaking your plans, right? If you know that something is the right move, then just do it. There's no need to like just randomly start swapping around. Like we have discipline. We are humans. You may have to go to the bathroom when you're walking around the mall, but we look down upon people who just shake shit out of their pant legs. Like when somebody starts smearing shit on the wall at Walmart, do people have to go to the bathroom sometimes? Sure. But I mean, we look at that and we're like, hey, that's probably a bad idea, right? So don't be the guy in the Walmart bathroom smearing shit on the wall. Just follow the plan. Have discipline. You can do it. I can do it. We can all do it. And I would say the last thing here is make sure you're getting your information from multiple sources. You don't just have to trust me. Sometimes I do get stuff wrong. But for sure, if you're going to randomly trust anyone, I'm a pretty good source. But if you're going to trust anybody, make sure it is not like random dude in your alliance chat number 76. Make sure you're going to like, the infantry Discord, the rock questions chat, my questions chat. Like find people with like billions and billions of kills and billions of deaths that have been fighting in a ton of KvKs that can really tell you how to play. Because people will come to me and they'll be like, well, my friend said this and this and this. And it's like, your friend isn't malicious. He's not maliciously trying to sink you, but you will sink if you follow this man's advice. If he tells you to jump off the Titanic without a life vest, and you do it, I don't know what to tell you, right? Like, kind of is what it is. Other than that, guys, if you guys enjoy the content, make sure you like, comment, subscribe, hit the notification bell, all that good stuff. If you guys are interested in the coaching that I talked about earlier, coaching right there, just DM me on Discord. It's $35 a session. Some days we're booked, some days we're not that booked. Just hit me up and we can kind of see what's up. And yeah, I appreciate you guys showing up. If you guys want to help support the channel in a financial type of way, you can always donate to the Streamlabs link in the description below. That's the #1 way to do it. Or you can check out our merch shop if you're interested in that as well. Other than that, guys, have yourselves a great day and thank you so much for watching.